From Vassar College, this is Conversations at the Salt Line with Wesley Dixon.
On this episode, a conversation with Liza Donnelly.
Hello, everyone. It's me, Wes, and we're here with another episode of Conversations at the Salt Line. And today we have another wonderful guest, another visually oriented guest, I should say. And her name is Liza Donnelly. You might know her and her work from The New Yorker or from many other places. She's an incredible cartoonist, author, and just overall amazing person. Thank you for being here, Liza.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
2 words, and you were already drawing.
And you were not looking at me, so I thought I'll take my chance.
Can I just tell you something unrelated to the bulk of our conversation? One thing that I appreciate so much about you is from your social media usage, which I follow you on both Instagram and Twitter. You do something that I love, which is you greet people. You tweet, "Good morning."
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
Because it sounds simple, but I think a lot of times we run through the world, we sort of pass people all the time. We don't acknowledge their presence. We don't sort of stop and sort of greet people. And I do that a lot here at Vassar. When I walk in the morning, I always sort of turn to the security guard and greet them, put it on my Instagram stories sometimes. We have an affinity for this sort of interacting with books. So I appreciate that in you.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, thank you. It's like in New York City, it's not always that easy to say hello to people that you don't, and I don't typically do it to random strangers, but Twitter just seemed like I wanted to do it because it got my day going too, and people seem to like it. I just kept doing it.
Create the space on Twitter. You don't have to sort of fight to say hello to somebody, right? You can just sort of integrate yourself into somebody's world. I love that. So you've done a lot in your career, and it's all incredible.
Thank you.
I'm excited to talk about so much of it. And one of the things that that I've engaged with that is a piece of work of yours is a book of yours called Very Funny Lady.
Thanks.
Which, as you can explain in more detail in a minute, sort of chronicles the history of women cartoonists, in particular at The New Yorker, but also sort of maps that onto sort of a historical narrative generally about this country and sort of how the two sort of influence each other, right? Sort of the cartoonists who are women for The New Yorker don't exist in a vacuum. They obviously exist in a larger ecosystem that influences their work. What was the process like of uncovering that history, chronicling it, detailing it, and putting it together?
Thank you for reading it, and thank you for your kind words. It was such a joy to write. So, I've been a cartoonist since I was a little girl, and I've been aware that of my gender all my life, but I just wanted to be a cartoonist. I didn't really care. I didn't want to do cartoons about gender when I was starting out. I just really wanted to do that. But then, and I did, and I went to college, and I went to Earlham College, and I began my career. I got cartoons in The New Yorker pretty early, and I was one of 4 women at the time in the late 70s. And then I knew there weren't that many women doing this, but I didn't think, I said, well, I just want to do it. And then in 1999, I was asked to be on a panel for the American Association of Editorial Cartoonists. And there weren't many women in that field either. It's even worse, I think, than regular cartooning at the time. And I said, sure, of course I'll do that. And there were a few of us women on the panel. The room was packed to the gills with attendees. And I looked out at the sea of viewers, and they're almost all men, cartoonists who come to the convention. And that was like a visual, like, slap in the face, like, oh, yeah, there is what. And then I began thinking, like, why is this? Why are not more women doing this? And that started the journey. And I started reading. I went to the New York Public Library, where the New Yorker archives are held. Started researching. This is pre-internet, so it was very much paper research. And I found there were women drawing cartoons for the New Yorker in 1925. And then I studied more. I looked more into it, and there were more women in those early years. But then they disappeared in the middle of the century, and then they came back when I came back in the 70s. So to me, it was a really interesting trajectory that followed the 2 waves of feminism in our country. And if you look at cartoons historically, the New Yorker is almost 100 years old. It's fascinating to look at our country through the eyes of the cartoonists. It's a great way to study study our world.
Yeah. Well, to the point you just made, I loved reading your book because I love learning generally. And one of the things that I understood as a general architect, which based on what you just said, was, both the number. So you sort of just mentioned the number of women cartoonists sort of ebbing and flowing with these waves of feminism. And I think that was new information for me, and I loved hearing that. I loved learning it. What also was new, part of Harsa, what you just said, was the ways in which women were portrayed in cartoons sort of changed with the time. Can you talk about that as well, too?
I can, but I didn't really focus on that a lot in the book. It's more about the creators. But what you're describing is a huge topic. And so, well, just briefly, in the 1920s, the women drawing for the New Yorker drew about their lives in an urban city in the 1920s, and most of those women in New York were a lot of them were flappers. And so they drew about what it was like to be a modern woman in New York City. And then a little bit more later, women were portrayed as mothers, housewives, and then in the 1950s, of course, and there was one woman at least drawing about the war. So there's one woman drawing about being a woman in the service. That was interesting. And then the 1950s and 1960s, when the women disappeared, most of the cartoons were about women as secretaries, housewives, mothers, bimbos, whatever, And they were not very. Many of them were sexist. Yeah.
One of the things that I guess is not, for me, shouldn't be insightful, but was helpful to have you put a fine point on in the book, was that, of course, the cartoonists as individuals, they change, right?
Yeah.
People, right? And so their lives are changing, how they're experiencing the world changes, right? And so then, of course, or maybe not of course, but as a function of that, their art and their cartoons change too, right? And so to your point, we were just, before the camera started rolling, Laz and I were talking about life in the city versus the Hudson Valley. And in the book, you're talking about some of the cartoonists who started off in the city and then moved.
Right.
Yeah. And then the kinds of things they were talking about were changing because they were in different environments.
Yeah.
They're life-changing.
They're life-changing. And also, if they wanted to maintain a sort of, there was one cartoonist who I loved, who in the 1920s, she drew a lot about flappers, and her cartoons were very, to my mind, modern, very feminist in tone, and not overtly feminist, but
right.
Then as the culture changed, her cartoons, I don't think, were as popular or as bought as much. She struggled at the New Yorker, and then she started selling to Esquire, which was a new magazine at the time, which had more traditional sort of misogynistic type cartoons, and she changed her style in order to make a living. She went with the culture, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's interesting to say it. But it's funny. When I read the book, one of the things when you all read it, you'll notice that Liza intersperses various cartoons throughout the pages, and oftentimes of those, so she's talking about on that particular page, but you can see the trajectory over time as new cartoonists enter the New Yorker, and you can see that progression on the pages. One of the things that I noted early on, and I at first was embarrassed to say this because, maybe it is not common, but the earlier cartoons of the 1920s and early 1930s New Yorker, I just did not get them.
Yeah,
like when I know. And at first I was like, wow, I think I'm generally thoughtful and generally kind of smart, but I just cannot make sense of these cartoons. And even when you were kind enough to explain them, I was like, I guess I get it. But that moment when I was reading the book and had that experience, I was like, what does it really mean for me or someone to not get a cartoon, right? And then sort of, what did it say about the cartoonist, sort of their, not station in life, but their vantage point in life, sort of the ways in which they're thinking, the ways in which I'm living, like where is this disconnect coming from, right? And I realized it's not really a problem. It's just sort of it's just the truth, right? That there are gulfs between our different experiences, and this might have highlighted that.
It's a complicated subject because on the one hand, you've got cartoonists, their view of the world in that time, whenever that is, and we may not understand that. Like, I did a cartoon, just a modern example, I did a cartoon a couple of years ago about fermenting things. Now, we all know now that that's kind of that was a trend, it still is, that maybe somebody in 30 years like, wow, what? So the same thing applies looking back, that somebody in the 1920s referring to some trend, like going on the stage was a big trend with flappers, I think, in the 1920s. They wanted to go perform on stage, and we can't really understand that clearly. And then also humor. You and I were going to talk about this. I don't know if you want to do it now, but humor sometimes can be divisive, and it can make somebody feel left out. And the New Yorker was founded. I don't think they tried to do that, but the New Yorker was founded as a humor magazine for the urban elite youth, and so the humor and the writing was geared towards that, and that might make people feel excluded if they don't understand the humor.
I mean, I didn't feel excluded, but I could imagine, to your point, how somebody would, right? Because they were very particular, just life, again, experiences, situations, or circumstances that informed these very particular snaps of life. Cartoons. You had
Yeah.
if you just did not experience, you would know. So I definitely understand. I definitely want to get into more about humor in a little bit, but what I wanted to talk about briefly before that was sort of the spirit of observation. And in the book, and you and I spoke about this offline too, one of the key components of being a successful cartoonist is having a keen spirit of observation, and just noticing things that not everyone would notice, right?
Yeah.
We walked in, you noticed my glasses, my bun, and those things are obvious, but there are probably many things that you noticed that you didn't say about me. But what's funny about the role of observation in cartooning is that, at least at the New Yorker, it's also coupled with rejection,
Kind of.
right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a mean way, but as we'll talk about in a moment, the process of submitting and trying to get a cartoon accepted by the New Yorker is grueling. The proportions are obviously very similar, those that do get accepted versus those that don't. And so it's funny because you have this sort of I keep saying spirit, the spirit of observation that sort of is like, take everything in, right? We want to see what's around. We want to accept everything. We want to like be open to seeing the world fully, or in certain ways, right? And then there's this sort of like, yeah, but we're not going to like accept, literally, and also in other ways, maybe emotionally or culturally, we're not going to accept all that you observe, right? How do you think about those two things together in conversation with
That's a great question. It's really painful, the amount of rejection. Even I've been doing it for 40 years, and still you get used to it on one level, but for your listeners, you submit this. Everybody does this. If you want to be considered, this is what you do. You send in maybe 5 to 10 drawings a week, sketches of cartoons a week, and then they buy one or they don't. So there's no assigning going on. It's just you come up with the ideas, and they will say yes or no. So you and I don't sell any every week by any means. So that's a lot of unused cartoons or ideas or observations that don't get seen. Now I can put them online,
right,
on my Substack. But the thing about that rejection, that amount of rejection is, and it's kind of a beautiful system, even though it hurts, is that it forces you to draw a lot. And the more you draw, it's probably true with writing too, the more you write, the better you get, hopefully, and the more you can define your own voice, because you're just constantly putting stuff on the paper and sorting it out. And you'll do a lot of bad drawings, and you'll do some good ones that they'll buy, and good ones that they don't buy. So it's sort of a method to the madness.
Yeah, and it's funny you said this. I was going to talk about this. In the book you mentioned, at least at the New Yorker, there's sort of the weekly art meeting where these submissions are reviewed by the editors and by others who then sort of make decisions on what's bought and what's not. And in the book, I think you highlight that sort of the discipline that is sort of forced on artists, cartoonists, by virtue of having this sort of scheduled weekly art meeting and submission schedule. The way you put it, I think, is that it... you didn't use the word unleash, but it, I don't know, it expands or promotes discovery or exploration, I think.
Yes, right, yeah.
Funny to me because I'm not an artist in the traditional sense. I think all of us are creative, but I'm not an artist. But my running assumption would have been that structure is like the antithesis of this creativity process, right? They don't like deadlines or timelines or, like there's the stories of artists always like not meeting the deadline because they didn't get the moment, right? They did not really have that nirvana yet they were trying to get for that particular piece of art, right? And so as a lay person and as a non-artist, producing artist, it was in some ways contradictory in my mind, or insightful, I should say, to sort of hear like actually, at least by way of cartooning in the New Yorker, this structure and discipline and these boundaries promoted creativity, promoted production in ways.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't wait for inspiration to strike. I'm sure you can't. You have to sort of in your own life. So you've got the New Yorker structure, this submission process, but then you have to set up a structure in your own daily work life so that you allow for the times when you don't have any thoughts, or you have to be patient with yourself. You have to let yourself have those moments like, I don't feel funny. Nothing's interesting to me today. And then you go do something else, and then you come back. So it's a loose structure, I guess.
It's funny. What I thought you were going to say, which is, I think you did say it in part, but what I was thinking when you were talking was you sort of have to create, like serendipity is what came to mind.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Creating space for those things to happen.
Exactly. And serendipity is a great word, because it's like you have the piece of paper. And this is how I work anyway. And you have on that paper or that notebook, you have a lot of different things. Like I write down words that I hear in the culture, or words that pop into my head, or something I read in the newspaper, and then I'm doodling. And so it's serendipitous, hopefully, that some things will combine. And you have to make it to sort of put them together in your mind sometimes, but sometimes they just fall together anyway. And that's like, cartoonists are like sponges. We soak up the culture on a daily basis, and then when you get to your desk, you squeeze it back out, and you might get something.
That's so interesting. We'll circle back to that in just a second. But just on the observation piece, I wanted to sort of ask you one question, which is, of course, we observe what we see based on the lens in which we walk through the world, and that's special. We all see things differently.
Yeah.
I think it's the reason why, as you said in the book and have said otherwise, diversity in cartooning is so important, because we get to see the different things that others see when we just have different folks in life. But I'm curious, if you had to think about how you would articulate what you don't see, it'd be such an interesting reflection to hear you.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody's ever asked me that before. What I don't see. Well, well, my mind goes immediately to how we all live in our own little silos, and how I'm guilty of reading the same newspapers that probably my readers read. So I don't push myself out into other worlds as much as perhaps I should. Culturally, I try to keep aware of as much as I can. But as a liberal white cis woman, I see through those eyes, and you have to take extra care to overcome that. And I'm not sure if I do it well enough, but I try.
It sounds like a cool potential series, right? Like an intentional effort to sort of draw what I don't see, right?
I like that. That's like, maybe we can collaborate on that, you and I.
Because I do think in a much broader societal sense, right? I think having an awareness and then trying to envision the lives that we know exist but don't sort of see, right? Could be helpful in lots of ways, right? Whether it's in this sort of broader trying to unify our country in some sort of social fabric sort of way, or even think about it from a policy perspective, right? Where it's like you can imagine policymakers in the most altruistic sense would hope to try to create policies that sort of benefit the largest number of people, even though they don't know and don't see. Right? And so the process of trying to imagine what we could be illuminating in other ways. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud with you.
Well, just on that subject, sort of on that subject, is the New Yorker has made a deliberate effort in the last 5 years to increase diversity. They have a new cartoon editor. She came in 2017, and she's a she. That's different for them. And and she made an effort of finding people of color and different genders as well. So it just takes, and so we're seeing their view of the world, albeit in a framework of a New Yorker cartoon, which has its own parameters. But anyway,
well, you made a comment earlier, which I have to play with because it seems like it's so much fun.
Okay.
Which is sort of, as cartoonists, you sort of soak up the culture as a sponge, rather than spit out what you sort of make of it. And so we live in such a dynamic time that I have to sort of just get your knee-jerk reaction. If you had to sort of pump out 3, whatever it was, adjectives, nouns, descriptors of our culture, and I know our culture is many things, but if you had to sort of synthesize like our culture today, how would you, with words, I know you're an artist, but how would you with words like pump out what you're taking in all the time?
Anxious. I mean, if you're talking about really in the moment, right? Yeah. Divided, anxious. I'm earnest. Those are 3 things that just came to my mind immediately. So didn't give it any thought. Yeah.
But probably really true. We're on a college campus. People are unfortunately really angry.
Oh, you're talking about Vassar?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but I'm just saying, as sort of a microcosm, what you're saying broadly, right?
Yeah.
Vassar is sort of is of the culture of the world in a sense, right? I think those things, some of them apply here too.
I bet.
I think anxious and earnest. We're not as divided, which I'm happy about here.
Good. I just I'm listening on tape to this biography of Lincoln, and so I just feel like we are anxious and divided as a culture, but I think Americans do try. A lot of us do try to make it better. That's what the earnest comes from. I think I'm a more optimistic person than maybe some people.
You mentioned earlier humor, and I want to really sit on that for a moment because, of course, humor is much of what you do, right? Cartoonists, I think, in part, are commentators, and I think they use humor to sort of make their commentary. And one of the things that you and I spoke about before is sort of the dual potential effects of humor, and particularly on the Saltline podcast, we want to sort of grapple with things that could be seemingly opposing, and I think humor hits on that, right? In one way, as you say, humor can really help to solidify culture and tradition. And in some ways, humor can help to break it down. And those can be good or bad in both dynamics, right? We can sort of reify nasty stereotypes and perceptions and limiting thoughts via humor, or we can open up all kinds of ideas, possibilities, and lived experience through humor. As you create as a cartoonist, how do you sort of move along that spectrum of the ways in which you use humor to move the needle either way in our world?
Well, the work that I do for the New Yorker is mostly about, now it's mostly about general life issues, whether it be just work or relationships or, that kind of thing, cooking, raising kids, whatever, this life stuff. And so I have to tap on what I know, but I try to find something that other people can connect with. You're looking for that connector, not consciously, but I think I do it subconsciously a bit. And but then the political stuff that I do is harder, and it's I don't do it. I've done political cartoons for the New Yorker, but they're pretty mild. I do stronger things online. So I've lost my train of thought now. The question was, what was your question?
No. You're right on the money. I mean,
okay.
I was thinking about just the way in which humor can do multiple things.
Oh, God, yeah.
It can sort of help create a world that, in my words, would be more inclusive, more broadening, more accepting of difference, or it could also put up some more partitions. We're really going to separate in these ways, or we're going to really define things in ways that are reductionist.
Yeah. So the cartoons in the New Yorker, you're looking for the common ground, that we all have parents, we all have relationships, hopefully, and we all cook, so those are the things that bring us together.
I
Okay.
cook wonderfully, but I have friends who they would not be captured in this "we all cook" category. I promise you, they Instacart or they DoorDash bodega sandwiches. It can make.
Well, let me rephrase that. We all enjoy to eat, don't we? I mean, most of us.
Enjoy eating.
Yeah, most of us. My cousin said she just eats to survive. She doesn't like to eat. I'm like, what? So those are you look for those general life things, but the political ones are harder because we've gotten so divided, or at least openly we've gotten divided. We've always been sort of divided. It's just now much more obvious. And so I try to do political cartoons that don't exacerbate that, don't add fuel to that fire. I'm trying not to be mean just to be mean in cartoons. Even I might feel it internally. I try to, because I think, first of all, what good does that do, really? It just inflames people that agree with me, and it makes everybody feel right about their own position instead of having a conversation. I see cartoons as a conversation. That's what I try to do anyway. I may not be talking to people on the other side of the aisle often. They may not see my work, but the potential's there. And I do get some people on my newsletter, subscribe to my newsletter, that I know think differently than I do. So that's something.
That's meaningful, and I just want to amplify it for a second. I mean, I think seeing your work as a conversation or a conversation starter, I think is an incredibly powerful intervention in our world. And I think to the point you made about connection earlier, I think the creativity that you're funneling into the art is really meant to connect and to open up conversation in ways that make us feel less divided, right? I think conversation probably is the indicator that we are less divided, right? We don't have to agree in said conversation, but having it in and of itself, I think, is at the very least a leading indicator that we are becoming less divided than we would otherwise be. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. Humor has an ugly past, so try to get past that past and do better stuff, I think. And I think what with the Charlie Hebdo crisis and the Danish cartoon controversy back in 2005, we're learning a lot about how powerful cartoons and how hurtful they can be. So
yeah, thinking about this book chronicling the history, at least of the New Yorker, of cartoonists, it was so wonderful and so insightful to sort of see visually the different, in this case, women cartoonists you highlighted over the almost century, and their backgrounds were so different. And I love that because I think, art sometimes can feel so exclusionary or so sort of hard to enter. There has to be certain kinds of training to be an artist. But I think you, in so many ways, proved that to be not necessarily true. There definitely are cartoonists you mentioned who had been formally trained in illustration or drawing, but there are many who absolutely did not. They were engineers or whatever else and happened to do it on the side. Can you talk about cartooning as a, I don't want to say equalizing, but as sort of a democratic art form, if you will?
It's an interesting question. Well, everybody likes cartoons, right? Everybody grows up reading something, comic, in the newspaper or online now. So in that way, it's equalizing, that we all share that passion, that love for cartoons and for laughter. So I'm not sure how to answer your question as an equalizer. I think that's the big equalizer, that we love to laugh, and laughter is also a great way to, or at least cartoons and laughter possibly, or smiling, is a great way to talk about serious subjects, because I think it softens it a little bit, but it makes it, the viewer lets their guard down and they enter into the subject and consider your viewpoint perhaps for a second.
Absolutely.
And then laugh, hopefully, or smile.
One other thing that I was thinking about too when I asked the question, or as I started answering the question, was sort of, when we were children, some of us were in school.
Yes. Oh yeah, doodling.
And doodling is not quite cartooning, but you can imagine in sort of the elemental parts of cartooning is sort of doodling, right? And oftentimes, at least when I was growing up, we would be punished, or you'd be sort of called out when you were paying attention. I mean, I think it was well intentioned, but I think it was sort of like that wasn't what we're supposed to be doing,
Right.
And so you were sort of told to stop, right? But as I read your book, I was like, I wonder what would happen if we let people freely doodle, which might be how they're observing either what they're learning or what's happening around them. We encourage that more as opposed to saying like, no.
I think that there's more studies now that say people who doodle are listening. They're listening more attentively, perhaps, because they're just doodling. And also, I know, at least I had a nice upbringing because I was allowed to draw all the time. But in school, you didn't really draw that much. But now I have two daughters who were raised in a school system where they incorporated drawing in like creative writing assignments. And I thought, oh, that's great. Yeah.
Great.
You're right.
Exactly.
So
one of the things that you also mentioned in the book, we talked about it a little bit here, is the role of voice. And I think having a voice, of course, as an artist is important. And it's sort of what makes you sort of a unique artist because you have your own particular voice. And it's funny because for cartooning, per your book, there's often these, I call them battles of voice, right? Because at least the New Yorker at times, the artist would submit their art, but they weren't always in control of the captioning of their art, which sort of directs or changes the story in one way or another based on how it was originally conceived. For you in your practice, sort of, I don't say where do you find your voice, but sort of what is a central part of your voice in your cartooning? Is it sort of the art? Is it the captioning? Is it the combination of the two? Where do you think the essence of your work is found?
I think for all cartoonists, it's in both the drawing and the words, or lack of words. Sometimes I do captionless cartoons. Some cartoonists have more obvious voices than others. It's crisper. My voice is not quite so identifiable. I think it is now because I've been doing it so long, but I'm trying to think how to answer your question. It's just a matter of drawing a lot to find what it is that's important to you, what you find funny. That's the other thing about the system of rejection is that you learn to find, you're drawing for yourself, basically, even though you're aware of the editor in the back of your mind. You're trying to amuse yourself, really, and speak to other people. So you end up finding out what you find is funny. And I'm very driven by the culture. So I want to react to what I'm seeing and feeling in the culture. Other cartoonists are totally internally motivated. They can't ignore the culture, but so my drawing style is very loose. I like that. I don't like to overwork my drawings. I try to make it as like immediate looking as possible, even though it might not be immediate. And then the caption has to flow easily. And I think I prefer cartoons that are written and drawn by one person. There are a lot of people who use writers. That's fine. It's a different kind of cartooning, but I think it coming from one person is just really great, when it works.
Yeah. One of the things in the book that you mentioned was that the longtime cartoon editor at the New Yorker, in describing artistic voice, sort of described it as consistency in the artist's, I guess, perception of situations or people. Like there's sort of like a way in which like situationally you can expect an artist to sort of react similarly to a range of situations, right? Which makes sense, perfectly makes sense. And of course, because I'm critical, I was sort of like, but what happens in our earlier comment, for example, when the artist changes and grows and experiences life differently such that they might have a different reaction to said situation or people or institutions.
Yeah.
Their voice changes.
Yeah.
And is that something that we should accept? I imagine that is normal, right? But the way it was discussed by this editor was like, we're looking for a singular voice that'll define you over the course.
Yeah, you have to that's a great question because you have to sort of listen to yourself and adjust as the culture adjusts. Because I know that my voice is changing a little bit to be a little bit more absurdist than it ever was before, I think. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and I'm feeling the sense that the younger cartoonists are doing cartoons that I've already done in a way, like about raising children or about cooking or about work stresses or stuff that I still do drawings about that, but I'm less inclined to do more of those and do something new, which ends up being slightly absurdist.
Yeah. That's so interesting. When you were talking earlier about captioning in cartoons, it was so funny because I was thinking through my millennial hat, and there are, of course, millennial cartoonists, but I'm not one of them. So what I could relate to in that conversation piece was trying to caption an Instagram photo, which is very hard. I find it very difficult, right? Because the photo is sometimes candid, sometimes prepared or staged or whatever. But there's a lot behind. There's a story behind every picture, obviously, right? And trying to find the caption that sort of goes with said picture is difficult. So I resonate with sort of the combination of caption and cartoon together.
Yeah, they dance together. The good cartoons that have it's not like before the New Yorker. The New Yorker sort of invented what we now know as the New Yorker cartoon, because before that they would have cartoons, but and comics, of course, was a different field in the newspapers, but they would have in things like Harper's or what are the names of some of the other magazines? Yeah, they would have an illustrated joke. So it would be a joke written, and then an illustrator would just do a drawing to go with the joke. That's not what the New Yorker cartoons are ideally. They're more like a capture, an instant capture of a moment in time of somebody saying something to somebody else. And so the imagery and the drawing have to work seamlessly together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like, have you heard of Overheard, like New York Overheard?
Yes.
Miami Overheard. Mm-hmm. This is what it is, like a social media version of the essence of a cartoon, right? Where it's like you're hearing just a moment, sans context of life, someone else's life, and it's but you're capturing it. It's like, that's so absurd.
And it's this can go right into talking about how social media has changed some of what I've done, which is, so the cartoons in the New Yorker are one thing with a caption, most of them, and they work fine on social media, but they don't have to be that. They can just be a drawing observation of something that's happening. And I've done that now. We talked about that off camera earlier, about live drawing things that are happening. And sometimes social media is just as happy with that as they are with a captioned, well-crafted cartoon.
Let's talk about the live drawing. I think it is so cool.
Thank you.
Of course. And it seems so apropos to how the progression of your career. I think it makes a lot of sense. Right? You had so many years and still have so many years as a cartoonist. And I think adding to that, or sort of developing from that, this live drawing of culturally, politically important events is so cool. Can you talk about how you got to that point, first of all, and sort of how that became a thing that was your thing, and then some of the fun and exciting and insightful events you've...
I'm glad you asked. Oh, no, because I love it. It's like an extra part of my career. I got an iPad back in 2016 and started drawing from the television set and immediately tweeting what I was drawing in these kind of bold, colorful drawings with sometimes a snarky tweet comment. But I was watching the State of the Union address, which can be pretty boring, and I was just drawing what I saw, and it resonated with social media. People seem to like this idea, so I just kept doing it. Eventually, was doing it for media outlets, CBS, CNN, The New Yorker, and I've been to. I go to the Oscars every year. I go to the red carpet and live draw what I see. I know. That was fun. I mean, I go on my own, and now it's like a regular thing. It's so great. And I draw what I see, which could include a celebrity. I'm not a caricaturist, but I give an impression of that person, or people vacuuming the red carpet, or painting, touching up I get there a couple days ahead of time, touching things up, construction workers, garbage collectors. So I try to capture everything that not everything, but a lot that I see. And then I've been to the Democratic National Convention, the White House, the women's marches, and different conferences for women's groups and things like that. So I went to the Trump's inauguration, which was kind of fascinating in Washington. So
this is amazing. I mean, it's incredible because, as you know, that we both know this. I mean, these events, these moments in history, I think, are consumed by regular folks like me. Whatever it is, the fashions, the performances, the speeches and political rallies, whatever it might be. And that's important, and you document that. But also what I heard you just say was you document things that are much broader than that.
Yeah.
That people might not think are always worth documenting, right? And people who are doing the not sexy work, so to speak, but you're capturing that. It's
try.
That I think you're trained to be so keen at. And that's incredible because I think it's really a effort for us all to be seen. The things that everyone doesn't typically see, to my earlier question, right? These, I think, are some of the things people don't always see, right? But you're trying to give life and voice and sort of figure to it, which is amazing.
Well, everybody deserves to be seen. And I feel like, I'm glad I can do a little part of showing.
I have to ask, you just named a couple of these events that you've live drawn, and some of them are in the same bucket, some of them are not. I'm thinking of, Trump's inauguration or the DNC or the Oscars. They're all super different swaths of American life or global life, I should say. I'm curious if you've seen these through lines, though, as you go and live draw and observe the people, the culture in those spaces. We can identify the differences clearly. But as you're drawing, what are you drawing? What are you seeing that is similar across these spaces?
I don't know. That's a very good question, Wesley. I'm not sure. The things that I am attracted to draw, I try to get a media outlet to agree with me, are things that are in the national conversation in some form or another. So those things you mentioned and I mentioned are certainly in that camp, or even sports events. I've tried drawing those. They're not as easy because people are moving too fast. But they tend to be things that and that's where the social media comes in. And with the new owner of Twitter, it's a little more difficult because Twitter's changed, and so I'm not sure how my live drawing is gonna play out going forward, but I'm gonna keep doing it.
Perfect. Before we have our hot seat questions, I have a couple of random things that I wanted to highlight because I just found them super interesting. So one of the things you mentioned in the book was that, I forgot which cartoonist it was, but you were saying that one of the cartoonists was particularly superstitious, and that many are superstitious because they're submitting and they want to, give themselves the best chance to get something selected or bought. What are some of your superstitions, if you have any?
Oh my God. I don't think I have any. I'm sorry. It's not very interesting. I probably do, but I can't think of them. Nothing in terms of work, really. I remember the woman you're talking about, too.
I found it cool. I resonated with it because...
Do you do? What are yours?
Particularly when I do these podcasts, I wear the same jewelry.
Oh.
And I wear it on the same hand, and it just gives me certain kinds of energy. And so I don't know if it's superstitious as much as just me trying to center myself.
That's great. Well, I do have one thing like that I have. Well, in terms of jewelry, you mentioned jewelry. I have two pieces of jewelry, bracelets one was given by one daughter and the other by the other daughter. So I make sure I'm always wearing those two pieces of jewelry.
Yes, my parents I have jewelry from my parents all the time on me. So it's a very similar kind of thing. The other thing that I wanted to mention that was so funny to me, a couple of things stuck out in the book, and these are certain cartoons. One of my favorite cartoons was the Roz Chast.
Yep, Chast.
Her glass floor cartoon.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Isn't that great? That's one of my favorites of hers, too. So This was probably drawn in the 80s, 1980s, so you have to kind of know that for context. And she has a woman sitting at a desk in an office-like setting, sort of meekly sitting there. And the floor she's sitting on, wait, was it glass?
Glass floor. I'm sorry, did I say ceiling? I meant to say glass floor.
Glass floor, yeah.
Yeah.
She's sitting, the desk and she are sitting on a glass floor, which is, I think it's got cracks in it, I forget. And what is the caption? Something about you have to sit very, very still, which, the glass ceiling was a big topic of conversation in the 80s. And that's an example of a good commentary on a topical idea that was being bandied around the culture. And I know also it's her personality. I know Roz, she's an old friend, and her personality is not to make waves. Like, for example, when she first started drawing for The New Yorker a year before I did, she would draw her work really small. And I talked to her about that, and she said, well, maybe if I draw really small, nobody will get mad at me. But so being a woman cartoonist, she was like me. She didn't think she was a woman cartoonist. We're just cartoonists. So you were drawing, but because of our culture, the culture of our growing up, it's like, don't bother anybody. Don't take up too much space. Don't make any waves. Just be nice. But we were doing cartoons and we were breaking a ceiling on our own in the late 70s. So, so that cartoon is pretty poignant.
She's wonderful. The other thing, the other person who I love so many of them in the book, but the other person who I resonated with so much was Mary
Petty. Yeah.
Hard because so much of her humor, not just her, many, but she in particular, were making fun of the ultra wealthy in ways that were just so funny.
I know.
It just resonates so much with it. And I sort of religiously love watching all the different housewives series on Bravo, which I think have a very similar vein of humor, right? Where it's like fundamentally we're watching because it's entertaining to see absurd wealthy people make absurd comments, make absurd decisions about their lives.
Yeah.
And so it was fun to see that even in cartooning that was a theme that resonated almost a decade.
Yeah, that she was great, and she was self-taught too. So her work is amazing.
So before we wrap up, I want to ask you a couple of hot seat questions from our students, who, of course, as you know, are incredibly thoughtful and observant. The first question is, what shapes do you use or avoid when drawing?
Ooh, shapes. Well, I am not of shapes. I don't know. I'm thinking about things that I don't draw well, like my cars are pretty funny looking, and machines. I'm not good with machinery because I don't like. If I had to draw these cameras I would just make it up, and if you were a camera person, you'd be pretty blown away by how funny I'm making stuff up. But I don't know.
Answer? It's helpful. The second thing is, and then this might hit a spot, we'll see. What is your favorite cartoon that was rejected or never bought? Like one of your own.
Mm-hmm. Well, my mind gravitates towards one particular. I'll mention two because they're similar.
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, or maybe less, there was a phrase being used in the culture called the war on women. And I drew a little girl asking her mother, what did you do in the war on women, Mommy? And that was not bought. And then another one, two little girls playing together, and one says to the other, I can't decide what I want to be when I grow up, a good girl or a slut. So, yeah. So they're both feminists, but... And the New Yorker bought a few in that vein over the years, but generally speaking, they didn't.
Before my last question, you saying this reminded me of something that I was thinking about when I was reading the book and preparing to talk to you about sort of these words in the culture that are sort of buzzwords. Mm-hmm. And I have not looked at every single one of your cartoons, of course, but I have to wonder if you either have or plan to make cartoons sort of using the words gaslit or gaslighting or boundaries. I have like boundaries in a therapy sense and gaslighting, both sort of in these therapy sense, but broader than that. I feel like I hear them every day, all the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like
I'm going to make a note.
misuse or used in hyperbolic, like the hyperbolically used, right?
Okay.
So let's see what we come up with.
Gaslighting. That's a good one. The other thing is you have to, with the New Yorker anyway, you have to sort of pay attention to what has been done. So I can imagine there might already be a gaslighting cartoon. But thank you.
And the last question someone submitted is, I'm going to rephrase it a little bit, but they're sort of asking, where do you go to observe most frequently?
Mm-hmm.
I think they're thinking people sometimes go to coffee shops, or they're in airports, or they're whatever, they have a spot where they know they're going to, people watching, they're going to observe. Where are your go-to locations to be able to get inspiration or ideas?
Just walking in New York. I don't know. I mean all of it. You're observing everything everywhere all the time. But my favorite thing to do is just walk in New York and different neighborhoods too.
Perfect additional question. We talked about where you live in New York, but what are some neighborhoods where you're just like, there's always beautiful like content there? What are your favorite like scouting neighborhoods?
See, I'm more Manhattan oriented than maybe many of your listeners, so I don't know Brooklyn that well. But parts of Manhattan, like the Chelsea area, or the very specific types of people in certain parts of the city, or the Upper West Side, or
Have you? I was gonna wait until afterwards, but I'll just do it on air quickly. Have you ever been in Harlem and seen the like gospel tour?
No, I haven't. I'd love to.
Telling you, it's wonderful, but it's also ripe.
Oh, okay.
Funny cartoons. Because there are these white people walking around Harlem, and it's as if it was like this is the cartoon, right? The cartoon is like they're going to the gospel tours. It is gorgeous. The music is great. The churches are wonderful.
Yeah.
But the visual of these groups of white people traipsing down like Lenox Avenue is like they're like at a zoo. It's like I mean, it's sad, but you get my point, right? That is like
right. On the one hand, you're looking for stereotypes. On the other hand, you just don't want to really abuse the stereotypes. You just want to be aware of them and maybe use them. Like the way people dress, I love to pay attention to that. That's why I mentioned Chelsea, or this certain wealthy demographic down there. But then, I live in Inwood, so there's a lot of diversity up there, and I love that, like walking around those ballparks that are up there, and different families and people having barbecues. So it's all great.
I wish I had eyes like yours.
I feel very lucky.
It's a beautiful gift, and I'm grateful you have to share it with.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
And for our listeners, thank you so much for joining us at another episode of Conversations at the Salt Line. Have a great day. Thank you.